The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. Some of you who have been members or patrons for a little while might remember that back in September, we covered this sort of U-shaped garbage collecting device that was sent out to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is between Hawaii and California and the Pacific Ocean. And there's just endless pieces of plastic there. And the idea was that this device, this U-shaped device, could catch and clean up the plastic from the oceans. And it was invented by Boyan Slat when he was just 17. And it has had some success. It has done some of what it was meant to accomplish. The entire U-shaped device travels with wind and wave propulsion, sort of like a U-shaped Pac-Man from the video game, which is eating plastic, and it orients itself in the wind. It catches concentrates of plastic, kind of. But the inventor, who's now 24, discovered that plastic is starting to drift out of the U-shaped funnel, and that also a piece of it has broken off. So this is unfortunately a setback in this type of device. I still think that this is extraordinary, given that the kid was 17 when he created it. I think this is exactly the type of thing we need to be thinking of. But as always, Pat, I do get concerned whenever there's something that supposedly is going to mitigate environmental damage. I worry that people will see it as a license to pollute because we can clean, rather than as an incentive to say, okay, we've gotten a hold now on being able to start to mitigate this. Let's continue to reduce our pollution and our garbage and our carbon footprint.
That's why I think geoengineering technology has to be coupled with intense environmental regulation, so that not only are we cleaning up the plastic that's currently in the ocean, we're also preventing new plastic from going in there. I think all of these setbacks can be overcome because it's basic engineering stuff, it sounds like. If pieces of the U-shape are breaking off, I'm sure they can come up with a way to make sure it all sticks together. And it's good that plastic floats. Like, it'll stay up at the top of the surface of the water. That'll make it a lot easier to collect all the plastic, and the U-shaped device doesn't go too far down. I think it only goes like 3 meters down in the surface of the water. So that means that marine life can swim under it. It's not going to be dangerous, apparently, to the fish and other marine life there. I think it's a really cool invention, and I think they'll be able to overcome the setbacks for sure.
Yeah, I think that there are engineering issues here that are fixable. The other side to this is always that you've got to understand what this thing won't do. And as you mentioned, a lot of the plastic sits near the surface. It appears as though UV light can start to sort of dissolve plastic into the water, which of course would not be capturable by a device like this. And that's why we got to stop putting plastic in the oceans. It is absolutely disgusting. And I don't know if you've seen, Pat, any documentaries on the Great Pacific the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. But people imagine that it's like huge pieces of trash. It's microplastic. So they will often, in the documentaries, take a cup and pick up a cup and then isolate that. And when you look in it, you see a ton of little pieces of plastic. And this is the type of stuff that gets eaten by animals, and it just is wreaking havoc.
I was going to say, if the fish are eating that stuff, that can't be good at all. This kid's project is apparently poised to pick up half of the trash in the Pacific Garbage Patch every 5 years. So based on that rate, it would be pretty minimal 20 years from now. If he's doing half every 5 years, we could stand a chance at eliminating the garbage patch altogether, maybe.
Yeah, but doesn't that assume that's half of the current amount, right? Because if we keep putting trash in, I think that it will start to exceed the capacity of this thing. I mean, there's a divide by two
like
formula,
a half-life,
which does imply, but then there's also the additional garbage, I think. I don't remember offhand now.
Yeah, and he only has one of these U-shaped devices so far, but the plan is to get 60 of them. And once you scale it up that high, I think you can really make a dent in this thing.
Well, yes, then you would start to make a serious dent. Really horrible story out of Poland. I've never done these escape room things. There's many of them in the United States. And I think the idea, to explain it simply, Pat, is basically it's a real-world puzzle game where you and your friends use clues to try to escape from a room. And as far as I know, in the United States, these things are pretty safe.
Yeah, I haven't done one, but you'll be in this small room with some strangers or maybe just your small group of friends, and it looks like a normal room, maybe with a pool table, maybe with a little bar. And based on the puzzles that you find in the room, you can kind of put together a way to find an escape plan, get out of the room. But I think they have one here in Cambridge, and the success rate's only like 5%. So you have to be really on top of your game if you're going to make it out of that thing.
That sounds like a really tough one. In any case, really horrible, tragic news out of Poland. 5 teenage girls who went to one of these escape rooms in Poland died in a fire. And police and fire officials are trying to figure out how the room caught fire to begin with, which killed the 15-year-old girls who were there, caused one to be hospitalized with severe burns. And it's not exactly clear what happened, but an absolute and total tragedy. And I don't know. I don't know enough about building code in Poland and business regulation of businesses open to the public to know whether what happened there could happen at escape rooms in the U.S. I would hope not. Also, the thing I don't know, Pat, is if you just kind of like, I don't know, start not feeling well or need to go to the bathroom or something while you're playing, there must be some way that you can signal and get out, right? Like you're not literally locked in, I'm guessing.
In the TV show Impractical Jokers, a punishment for one of the players was that he had to go to an escape room with a bunch of strangers for an hour and pee his pants, and they didn't let him leave in that episode. So I'm not sure about that.
Okay, well,
not in that case.
I don't know if that is reflective of the way that they actually work. I think more than likely you've got to allow people to go to the bathroom at some point if they need to, or just say, hey, I'm out. I want to leave the game or whatever. In any case, absolutely horrible. And it's still unclear what started the fire. Maybe lighting related.
It seems pretty fixable, though. Shouldn't someone just be monitoring the escape room at all times by way of a camera? And if something goes wrong, like if a fire starts, they should be able to open the doors immediately, right? Isn't it that simple? If you're going to trap people in a room, there has to be some fail-safe option to let them out if need be.
You would think so. And that's why, I mean, it's still very early and we don't know exactly what's going on, but everything Pat is saying sounds reasonable. And if it's not the case, I would like to know why. The Supreme Court has agreed to decide whether a federal law that blocks trademarks for brand names or logos that have profane words or sexual imagery violates free speech rights, because there's a clothing brand called Fucked, but it's spelled F-U-C-T, okay? And the justices are going to hear the arguments of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office's appeal from a lower court decision that Eric Brunetti should have been allowed to trademark that brand name, which sounds like profanity, but is spelled in a different way. And the main issue here is a provision of U.S. trademark law which lets the office deny trademarks on immoral or scandalous words and symbols. And the question is, does that violate the free speech guarantee that's enshrined in the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution? So I'm very interested in the results of this. I was reminded, Pat, of similar laws around vanity license plates and how different states, depending on how religious the state is in many cases, have different sort of lines as to how provocative a vanity license plate you're allowed to have, and the issue of whether that is the government limiting speech in some way.
I suppose the only reasonable argument against vanity license plates that are profane would be that if you have to report someone and you're one of these people who are uptight and don't want to use offensive language, maybe you would stop yourself from reporting someone because you don't want to give the license plate number and you don't want to have to say a swear word. Like, that's the only reason I would think that you'd have to keep an eye on vanity license plates.
Yeah, and that's a pretty bad argument, I would say, in order to restrict speech. Now, so those who are on the side of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Organization, their argument is saying that you can't trademark profane phrases or words is not a limitation on speech by the government. That the government trademark office is not under any free speech requirement to allow the registration as a federal trademark of profanity. They're not preventing anyone from saying it. You can still call your company that. You just can't trademark it. The counter argument would be that you are denying services, meaning mechanisms, I guess we would call them, like trademarking, for individuals and companies merely on the basis of a subjective determination that what they're saying is profane, and that, of course, profanity is sort of in the eye of the beholder to some degree. It's a very interesting case, and I think you should be able to trademark it. That's the side I'm on. But we're definitely going to be following this one, Pat, and seeing what the outcome is.
Yeah, I really don't see what's immoral or scandalous about the word F-U-C-T, fucked. It doesn't personally offend me. I'm not bothered by it, and I'd like to see that business be able to brand itself with that name if they so choose. There's actually a new, I don't know, is it pho or foo, that noodle soup dish, that Asian dish? Pho, okay. Up in Keene, New Hampshire, there's a new restaurant called Pho Keene Great. So Keene being the name of the town, pho, of course, the food, and great being an awesome word to put it all together. And they were forced to either change their name or to shut down ahead of their opening. And I think that's just completely outrageous. I would like to see that allowed.
I saw that, and I don't know where I saw that story, and it should absolutely be allowed. It's ridiculous. This is the weirdest thing, but there was once a controversy on my Facebook page about a restaurant here in Boston that's on Harvard Ave or Harvard Street called My Young Dong. And of course, that's the way it sounds in English, but it's a Korean restaurant, and I think it has some language, some meaning in Korean. You know, it's not what it sounds like. And I remember a whole discussion on my Facebook page about whether that should be allowed, and that it's indicative or reminiscent or alluding to child molestation. Give me a break.
Yeah, like, does their intent play any role into it? Like, if they're immigrants who don't necessarily speak English well and don't understand the double entendre, are they allowed to get away with naming their business that, versus if they know what they're doing and trying to brand it this way, maybe that's not allowed? That's where it gets wishy-washy,
I don't know how you legislate the intent. I don't know how you can enforce that because, you know, yes, there are situations like with Trump's travel ban where a court decided you can consider the intent of Trump in doing this, and we can also use his tweets and campaign statements to ascertain the intent. But with something like My Young Dong or, Pho Keene Great or whatever, I don't know how you bring in intent to it and how you demonstrate it.
Yeah, but at least we know that Republicans and the moral majority on the right, they are against the use of profanity, and I think that means that they're not going to support Trump in 2020 because he's been sticking to that stuff.
Yeah, and they're against language policing, except when they're not, and they're against tone policing, except when they do it, and all of that stuff, which we've heard many times before. Send me your thoughts. Should you be able to trademark profane and so-called, even the use of the word scandalous seems to me hyperbolic. Like, what kind of a scandal could be caused by a trademark being granted to something that's profane sounding?
Yeah, I'm going to keep that one rhetorical. I don't know what the answer is to that one.
That does it for today. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to our 213 new members who signed up since the beginning of January.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.